Prologue. Return to the other side. Immediately after, Olivia Hunter, Melissa Hunter and Vega the Vampire King found themselves walking into one universe after leaving another. The difference was noticeable and somehow tangible to both Olivia and Melissa. "How does it feel?" asked Vega as he looked at Olivia with a smile on his face. "How does what feel?" asked Olivia as she looked back at Vega. "How does it feel to be like Alice? How does it feel to be on the other side of the looking glass?" asked Vega with a smile. "Oh, yeah. It feels, to be honest, it does feel different here. Somehow, for some reason. I don't know, it feels exciting, but at the same time, like we shouldn't be here. Like we are somewhere we are not supposed to be. I don't know," said Olivia with a smile and with a nervous laugh, because she honestly felt like something was not right, as if they were trespassing somewhere. "It's just nerves, beautiful. It's just the fact of being somewhere new. Don't worry, this is going to be just as new for me as it will be for you. The last time I was back here was a long time ago. But this place, this universe, this world, this planet is where I came from. This is where I was born. Where we are now is where I returned to when I was younger. And where we are now is where I left this reality and found myself in a completely different and yet parallel dimension, in a completely different universe, on a completely new world," said Vega, as he looked around at the ruins of the ancient structure they were stood within, and the same ancient structure and ruins within which he had discovered the invisible doorway to the universe where he eventually became the Vampire King, and began the vampire society that had now established itself all over the world. Vega knew that the world he originated from had moved on substantially since he had left it centuries before, and it had rebuilt itself after seemingly being struck by an extinction-level event in the form of an asteroid that had caused change on a global scale. However, Vega had been given a vision by his friend, the enigmatic Man in Black, formerly known as the god Hermes, that some of the humans and the vampires of the world of his origin had found a way to survive the cataclysm that had befallen them. And, apparently, after centuries of working together, the human and vampire survivors of Vega's home world had found a way to put their differences behind them and build a society together. "I'm sure you're right," said Olivia with a smile, as she looked at Vega and then at the ruins of the structure they were standing within. "What is this place? It looks ancient. Who lived here? Who did this used to belong to?" asked Olivia, as she walked around the ruins of what clearly used to be some kind of temple or shrine, where members of a particular tribe or civilization used to worship a particular god and deity, and who also perhaps practiced a particular religion, much like the ancient Greek and Roman cultures used to. "To be honest, I have no idea. I know absolutely nothing about this place, nor who used to come here, and most likely to worship by the look of it," replied Vega, as he followed Olivia around the ancient structure. "This place is so old. It must be thousands of years old," said Melissa, as she went over to what looked like some shards of coloured glass, which appeared to be pieces of what used to be some kind of stained glass window. The ruins of the ancient structure had been seemingly reclaimed by nature in some places, and the forest of trees that surrounded it could clearly be seen attempting to encroach more and more. However, as Olivia and Melissa Hunter both attempted to uncover and identify some of the remnants of the tapestries and artwork that still remained upon some of the walls, they slowly began to uncover enough details that helped them piece together a potential answer to the question of who used the place where they were, and for what reason. "Wolves," said Melissa, as her voice echoed off the remaining walls that were still standing, as she looked at her mother, with what looked like the sculpted head of a wolf behind her. Olivia was holding several fabric parchments that appeared to depict wolves, as well as what appeared to be humans changing into wolves while engaging in some kind of ceremony. However, the language of the text upon the tapestries and parchments was alien to Olivia, Melissa, as well as to Vega. "These people were werewolves. They must have been," said Melissa with a grin, as she looked at her mother. "Wow, how about that? A place where they worship wolves and were most likely werewolves. That's amazing." "That is amazing," said Vega, as he walked over to Melissa. "But to me, the most amazing thing is that in all the time that I lived in this universe, in this reality, from the time that I was born until I was a teenager, I never once heard of there being werewolves. I had no idea they even existed, not to mention that there was a place where there was a wolf religion being practiced. So, before you came to our universe, you had never heard of nor met a werewolf?" asked Olivia, as she looked over at Vega, who was now standing near Melissa and marvelling at the carved facade of the wolf upon the stone wall near where she was standing. "No. I mean, there were children's stories of changelings and the like, those who could change shape with a thought, but I always believed they were just bedtime stories. Until I actually encountered one or two in your reality. I mean, where we came from. There were also stories of tree spirits, but never anything to be taken seriously, nor as fact. To vampires, humans were the monsters, just as vampires were the monsters of humans, I'm sure. We were at war with one another for a long time, for all of recorded history, at least as far as I was told. That is why when I came back here, after I had initially left, all those years ago, and I discovered that the world had been turned into a wasteland, I'd been led to believe that humans had been responsible for destroying this world," explained Vega, as he recalled a previous visit that he had made to the parallel reality of his origin, as well as what he had seen, as well as what and who he had believed had been responsible for seemingly destroying the world. "Was this place always like this? Or was it damaged during the war? Or perhaps after that asteroid fell?" asked Olivia. "This place hasn't changed in all the years since I've been coming here. I have no idea what led to it descending into the state it is now in, and has remained in for hundreds of years," explained Vega, as he started to walk over to Olivia once again. "However, it appears that we are not the only visitors to this place that there have been recently," said Vega, as he looked down and saw what appeared to be a broken flashlight upon the floor. "Are you saying that people have been here since you last left?" asked Olivia, as she walked over to the flashlight and picked it up off the floor. "Undoubtedly. Someone must have been here recently. Perhaps an archaeological expedition discovered it and has been studying this place. And I wonder whether they discovered the portal to your universe while they were here as well. But if that were the case, then I'm sure that we would have discovered other visitors within the grounds of the house. But, at least to my knowledge, we have not. But we do not keep the circular monument within the grounds of the house under 24-hour surveillance, so there is a possibility that perhaps someone might have crossed over from this universe to that universe," explained Vega. "And vice versa?" asked Melissa, as she looked at Vega. "Is it also possible that humans, and perhaps vampires, have travelled from our universe to this universe?" Short answer, no. At least, not as far as I'm aware. No, vampires would have entered the stone monument, because doing so would have meant their death. Something that was made quite clear to all concerned. But, like I said, who knows? It is possible that before I first used the interdimensional doorway, humans from the other universe may have used it to cross into this universe. But to be honest, it is still unclear who created the tear between the two universes, nor for what reason. Because, as far as I am aware, a dimensional gateway is not a natural occurrence, replied Vega as he looked into Olivia's eyes. Do you think the man in black knows who, what, and how the tear, as you call it, was created? Asked Olivia, as she speculated whether the enigmatic and powerful black-attired acquaintance of Vega had any knowledge of how such a doorway between two parallel universes could have been created. It's possible. I wouldn't be surprised. They are someone who is immensely powerful and capable of... Vega replied, before he stopped mid-sentence after hearing what appeared to be the sound of approaching footsteps. Vega looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at Vega. Melissa looked at her mother before the right hand of a black-cloaked individual appeared from behind Melissa and was then put over her mouth. Both Olivia and Vega looked on in horror as they watched Melissa seemingly be pulled into the shadows and out of sight. Olivia immediately ran over to where her daughter had only seconds before been standing in an attempt to follow and stop whomever had seemingly kidnapped Melissa. However, then Olivia heard a voice say, "Stop," and she found herself standing motionless and unable to move. It wasn't long before several other black-cloaked individuals appeared and began walking towards Olivia and Vega. And then a final individual walked into the ruins of the previous place of worship with their hands behind their back and with a smile upon their face. "Hello," said the smartly dressed man with the short black hair as he walked towards Olivia and Vega, before stopping and then looking directly at Vega and saying, "And welcome home." "What's the meaning of this?" asked Vega furiously as he walked over to the short-haired man who was wearing a grey suit. "Where's the girl? What have you done with her?" "The girl is being looked after, I can assure you, and you will get to see her again. However, for now, I want to talk about who you are and where you come from," said the smartly dressed man in the grey suit. "Who are you?" "Do you know who I am?" asked Vega, as he stood face to face with the unknown smartly dressed man and looked into his eyes. "Of course I know who you are, and I am not surprised you have no idea who I am, because it has been a while since you have been back, has it not? So allow me to introduce myself. I am Victus, and, like you, I am a vampire. But, unlike you, I'm not just the Vampire King, as you call yourself. No, I guess you would have to refer to me as the King of the World," replied Victus, with an unwavering smile, as he looked unblinkingly into the eyes of Vega. Wait, you were talking in the language of my people. You were not speaking English. You were speaking in the language I grew up with. What used to be called Velorum. The language of the educated. Those families who my family and I used to make vessels for," said Vega, as he immediately identified, translated, and remembered the language that Victus was speaking to be the same language that he had been taught to use when he was a child and used to interact with other vampires he grew up around. "I see you still remember it, even after all these years. Very impressive. However, you are a linguist, are you not? A storyteller? So I would think that languages would be second nature to you. But yes, I am speaking Velorum, a language that has not really changed that much in 500 years. I suppose it is like the Latin of their world, The language of the enlightened, I believe it is referred to as, if I'm not wrong, said Victus with a smile, before he sidestepped around Vega and he approached Olivia, still with both hands behind his back. Olivia remained motionless, as if she had been physically frozen in place somehow. "What have you done to her?" asked Vega, as he looked at Victus. "Nothing, yet," replied Victus, before laughing to himself. "No, I'm sorry. I do not plan to harm her, just as long as she plays nice and does not attack me or any of my friends here. I already know who she is," said Victus, as he looked into Olivia's eyes, and he stroked her chin with the fingers of his right hand. Vega immediately launched himself at Victus in an attempt to attack him for touching Olivia. However, Victus immediately reached out his left hand and put it around Vega's throat and physically held him in place. "Not so fast, my boy," said Victus with a smile, as he looked into Vega's eyes and held him by the throat with his left hand, while also continuing to touch Olivia's face with the fingers of his right hand, seemingly with the same effort to accomplish both feats. Vega was unable to break free of Victus's grasp, and was even finding it hard to breathe as he looked back at him. Vega could not believe Victus's seemingly natural strength and speed, which felt superior in every way to his own. "Let me explain something to you, my friend. No matter what you led the people of that other world to believe, and no matter what society of vampires you may think you have created, we here are the only true vampires that there are. And yes, I do count you among us, since you too were born here. But as for what exists over there, on the other side of that gateway, and whomever they think they are not true vampires. We have known about your little experiment with the humans of that world, during which you mixed vampire genetics with human genetics for some time. In fact, that is almost what happened over here after we rebuilt ourselves, both humans and vampires. There was peace, and there still is. Well, there was. However, the humans of this world know that they are second-class citizens and are not meant to be anything more than they are. What can I say? The old ways are sometimes the best ways. Am I right? There are not that many humans left, actually. Perhaps 1,000 at most. Maybe less. I'm not sure. We vampires are the superior race, as we have always been, of course. We are the ones who use the technology that we were given by our extraterrestrial benefactors all those years ago to rebuild our planet and to further our understanding of the universe, not to mention the ability to harness intergalactic travel. It took some time, but when the time was right, we did to humanity what we had sought to do before both of our species were almost wiped out by that asteroid that fell all those centuries ago. We won the war. Or, as you call it on your side of the mirror, we won the vendetta that we have always been engaged in with humanity. After all, we are, and we always will be, the superior race, right? Explained Victus, as he turned his head to address both Olivia and Vega. However, only Vega could understand what Victus was saying. In any case, as I was saying, you are one of us. You are not the Vampire King, because I am, but you are free to live among us and tell tales of your experiences on the other side, if you wish. However, I cannot permit you to attempt to somehow overthrow me with a vendetta of your own, so you will be taken into custody for a short period of time, before eventually being released. Your wife, on the other hand, I would like to talk to privately about a few things, namely the fact that she's a werewolf, something no one has seen for centuries. A human who can change into a wolf, and a wolf who can change into a human? Fascinating, said Victus, as he released his grasp of Vega's throat and then pushed him towards two of the black-cloaked individuals standing behind him. No, I I won't let you hurt her, said Vega, as he was held in place and attempted to break free. She will not be harmed. I just want to ask her a few questions, and I am fully aware that she does not speak Valorum. Fortunately, I have been learning English for some time with the aid of someone you may know where you come from, but I will let them introduce themselves when they feel it is necessary. Right now, Vega, I must ask you to leave us. You will be taken back to the city, somewhere that did not exist when you were last here, and will perhaps seem out of the ordinary for this world, but also strangely familiar, seeing as some of the architectural details of our cities and structures appear to mirror those of the cities of the Earth of the other universe. However, I think you will find us a lot more technologically superior in many respects in comparison to the world you are familiar with, even though I am aware that technology is almost as ubiquitous there as it is here, explained Victus as he walked over to Vega and addressed him directly, before nodding to the black-cloaked men standing behind him and to the left of Vega, before Vega was forcibly pulled away and eventually out of the ruins. Victus turned around on the spot and then walked over to Olivia. When Victus was again standing within touching distance of Olivia, within moments her ability to move had seemingly been restored to her, and she immediately found herself stumbling to the floor. As Olivia lay face down on the floor, Victus put his right hand on Olivia's left shoulder, and then he crouched down and whispered into Olivia's left ear. "You're special. You are the wolf. Please, allow me to tell you what I learned about your kind, and perhaps enlighten you to the knowledge that I possess of who you are, who the wolf is, and where they come from. Because, despite what you may have been led to believe, there is more to the wolf than even you might be aware," said Victus, before he gently helped Olivia to her feet and then handed her off to another unidentifiable black-cloaked individual. Moments later, Victus, Olivia, and everyone else who had entered the ruins exited where they were, as well as the dense foliage of the Vorath forest, and then they headed in the direction of the nearest city.